for Italk with Pastor Kwame. You are watching your favorite television station, FBN, which has come to stay, has come to impact, has come to lift God's name on high for a generation such as this one. Father, we thank you today. Help us to learn, help us to glean, help us to receive, help us to kind of run with what we are going to talk about today. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so today is going to be a very interesting day, and other days going forward. I'm going to put a lot of men of God and a lot of friends. Today there will be a special guest that I will bring on the show, because the topic we are going to talk about is so heavy that I can't lift it myself. Guess what? We'll be talking about wait a minute, why am I rushing? Hello, share the link if you are watching us. Share the link. I want to greet my producer and the family. I want to greet all of other co-hosts and all the great people behind the scenes on FBN. Please share the show for us. Please share the show. Let me share it also. I'm going to go on Facebook and share it onto my platforms. And because the topic is so hot, we have to let everybody know. Producer, I've given it to my I've given the link to the guest that will be coming on. So when he pops up at the green screen, I know how you will figure out how to connect him. I'll cue you when I need him on board. Yes, but right now I'm going to find. So please share with us. Call a friend to call a friend that hey, Italk is on. So let's learn together. Let's learn together. All right. Awesome. Yes. So let me share, and then you also share. There you go. It's on now. All right, so let's all share together. All right, so share and tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. All right, so this is actually the YouTube link. Awesome. We are on now. We are on. Beautiful. I wanted the Facebook link, but I got the YouTube link now. Let me see if I can get but today's topic is amazing, so I want you to all get in and get ready. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. So get ready. All right. Awesome. So let me share it on my wall now, and you can also do the same. Please share, because what we're going to talk about is impressive. It's impressive. So please share. I'm trying to copy the link. I don't know how. I forgot. There it is. Excellent. So I got the link here. Post it on different platforms for people to connect with us. All right. Today, what we'll be talking about is very fascinating. If you catch us live, you enjoy it. But if you don't catch us live, you will catch it when you come across the show. All right, great. Why do bad things happen to innocent people? My goodness. All right. So that is what we're going to talk about. Why do bad things happen to innocent people? Why do bad things happen to these innocent people? So there are a few people that I reach out to, and one of them is contacting me. So we're going to get that person in. Also, it's my spiritual father. If he comes on, then it's going to be fire. Um, um, I want us to consider a scenario. For example, as a pastor, I want you to pretend for this hour that you're a pastor. What are you going to do when you visit a member and their 8-year-old daughter just died, just like that? And when you sit next to this family, they ask you, is it God's will for an innocent 8-year-old to die just like that? And I don't want to make it too graphic, but how she died is a whole another pain, knocked down by a car with a drunk driver. And they ask you, this innocent girl, where was God? God couldn't intervene or not? All right. So I'm going to prepare my guest. So producer, please play one quick song, and I'm going to prepare my guests. I think I might get two guests today, but it will be one after the other. So a quick song, and then we'll come back and take my first guest, and then if my second guest also gives us a green light, then we're going to have him also. So a quick song, and I'll be right back. Na, 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 yeah. Come on, if you believe, say, set time has come, yeah. It is time, oh Lord, oh Lord. Oh yeah. Set time has come, yeah. Lord favor Zion, come for you and me. Don't just give up on God. Slow down. Yeah. Truly bound to talk, y'all. God is faithful, you heard? Yeah. Don't you ever rush in life. Faithful is he who is called you. 1,000 years he said they forgot. You would never end in shame. Ever rush in life, faithful is he who has called you. 30 years is a day for God. Don't rush, you will never end in shame. Slow down. Some say God is slow to his promises. Some say God takes too long to fulfill his word. Now that no faithful is he who is called, yeah. He makes all things beautiful in his time. In his time. He makes all things beautiful in his time. In his time. He makes all things beautiful in his time. Ever rush in life, faithful is he who has called you. 30 years is a day for God. Oh yeah. You will never end in shame. Don't you ever rush in life, faithful is he who has called you. Is a day for God. You will never end in shame. Slow down. Men pray and walk by you. Hano kafo, hano na wafrawo. If you pay, here the dakunte. On my one name, I say, young children say.
So many things they happen for this world. The other day somebody say God no day. Another day another person say he be like say God the plan. You know they see what they happen. All right, welcome back. So my first guest, I think I'm told that he's right behind the scene. There he is. He looks very smart. All right. So welcome, Mr. Sari. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Please talk if you can hear me so that I can also respond accordingly. Can you hear me, Mr. Sari?
Yes, I can hear you, brother.
Beautiful. So we are live on Facebook as well as we are on YouTube. And thank you for making time to come. I will be calling you from time to time to share your in-depth understanding biblically on these real life questions. All right. So before you chime in, I want to set the stage by giving you like a practical real life example so that you can take it from there. So imagine you are a pastor of a local church and then you visit one of your members and she just lost their 8-year-old daughter to a drunk driver, just like that, and you sit
Mm.
next to them in a couch, and then they draw closer to you and they ask you the question. So, Pastor, is it God's will that
Mm.
my daughter just leaves this painful way? Please, what do you tell such a family? And then from there, you can just address the bigger issue.
Mm.
Why do things like this happen to innocent people? Please take it away.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you? Yeah. This
I
is
can
a
hear you,
very
please.
this is a very good question, and I think as all the viewers can tell, it's also a very difficult situation for anybody to find themselves in.
Right.
And I think other behind that whole question is uh, what is the righteousness or what is the reason?
Mm,
And I think to comfort such a person, I think especially if they are Christians, our first approach should be to definitely be present with our personal sense of sorrow and
mhm.
sharing in that pain, because we are told to
Right.
weep with those who weep and
Mm-hmm.
sorrow with them as well, right? So we need to first empathize in our
Mm,
apologies and in our ways of finding comfort towards them just by being human as
that's
somebody
right.
who has been affected. And I think in terms of helping them to grapple with the question, because for some it may just be just a question at the moment, but for some it could be a very, very serious question that could prolong with them for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think if they are Christian, it's good to remind them that God is in control and
Amen.
that God is working out his purposes in their lives,
Mm,
and he is not against them in all that he does. You
mm,
see, I think that's very important to be reminded that the sovereignty of God by which he directs our life for the Christian, it is
mm-hmm.
always for a good purpose. It always
Okay.
has a good end to it. So we need
Mm,
to remind them of Romans 8:28, that God is working all things,
right.
and all it's required is to trust his wisdom, and in due
Mm,
time we would
right.
come to a place where we would see that it was not in vain, and
Mm.
truly whatever God did, it was well,
Okay. Good. Good.
right?
Good. 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 So get into it. Let me get my finger on the issue now. So
Mhm.
would it's not a simple answer, but would you say it wasn't God's will, but it was God allowed? How would you phrase it? Because they wanted to know,
Okay.
is this God's will
Yeah,
for water?
yeah. I would say yes. God is over all things, and the Bible is clear that whether good or evil that comes, it is
Mm-hmm.
from God. So,
Mm,
where you are talking about God allowing, it's not a mere permission. Because by that
mm,
statement, you are saying God made a choice to say, I'm going to intervene or I'm going
mm-hmm.
to not, right? And
Okay.
so it's an
Uh-huh.
active will. And the reason why God allowed it, it's
Mm-hmm.
because he determined that this is a part of his plan for your
Mm.
life
So
and for your
so
family and all those.
are you
Yeah.
saying that it had to happen? It can be an accident.
Oh, let's put it this way: in the economy of God, nothing is an accident,
Mm,
right? The Bible tells us even when you cast the lot into the lap, like where there is a
mm-hmm.
die cast, and whatever the decision that is supposed to come out, what you
Mm-hmm.
will call chance, the Bible said even that decision of the chance is from the Lord, right?
Wow.
So
Wow.
for the Christian, we understand that in God's economy, there is nothing like chance because
Mm-hmm.
everything is known to God, and He is the master behind everything, and His purpose and His will is what determines all things that whatsoever comes to pass in anyone's life.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. So would that make it very difficult or easy for the family to kind of deal with the emotional weight of
I,
the
I
issue?
Yeah, I think if they are Christians, reminding them of the God who is behind it is important, right? Because we know for a fact God loves us as his people.
Mm-hmm.
And he have
Mm-hmm.
said, I am never against you, but I'm always for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then it's good to show also that this is not unique to you, because you look in the scriptures, especially Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
He was the most righteous man, and yet
Mm.
something evil came to him, right? So
Okay.
seeing it from there that it is a part of God's dealings with his people, it
Wow.
allows the person to recognize that this is a part of how God deals with his people, and that person is not in a unique situation. And you could
Mm-hmm.
call on various examples to help them to at least have a sense that this is how God deals with his people. And as we can see in the life of Christ or the life of Joseph,
Mm-hmm.
it always ends well.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. So let me challenge you a little bit. I think I might
Sure.
need to get you to stick around longer than I thought. Now, the approach I first thought about was the fact that if we only view the the handiwork of God on only the, let me put it this way, I'll explain it a little clearer because of the way I make illustrations. Sometimes my illustrations are not theologically sound unless I explain. But if you consider the Alpha and the Omega as the beginning and the end, right? I am of the understanding that most of the time when we talk about things that are happening, we only factor in the alpha part, which is God is in it and is the beginning of all things, and therefore he is kind of perfectly allowing all things to flow, right? But for me, this is where I want to challenge you a little bit. I reckon that the reason some things will happen, which is not God's will, is primarily because he is going to, in the end, pull books and bring into judgment and bring into questioning every deed of men, both the dead and the living. So once you
Mhm.
factor in the fact that God was silent, but he's not done, you see. And so once you interpret his silent to be his will, then you forgot that he's about to do judgment when it's all said and done. So for me, my approach is that the things that we see, it's like in an examination, when the examination is on, the teacher will watch you circle the wrong answer because he knows that he's going to mark it. You see what I'm trying to say? But if he's teaching, then you say, oh, that's not right. So I understand the fact that God is in full control, but I want to challenge you and say, isn't it possible that we have neglected the fact that every deed, every action will be brought to book by the time the omega component sets in, so that you begin to understand that things that will happen will be like God will say something like, I am the Lord, I hate divorce. That kind of the whole issue of, because I know when I start with you, we're not going to finish. We will do the free will and the all of that to take us to a very crazy place. But the point is that, what would you say about the fact that if somebody says that, I feel that because God will balance the books, some of the things we see, he's silent about it, but he's not done with it. What do you say about that?
Sure. It's true that the Bible said every word you will give account for it, and
Mm,
there is a day of judgment wherein all the works of men they receive
mhm.
a reward, right? But
Right.
notice the Bible also said God have created both the righteous and the wicked for the day
Mm-hmm.
of for that day, right? Even the wicked, they've been created for the day of judgment, right?
Mm,
Now, when we talk about God's will,
mm-hmm.
it does not negate responsibility. So, for
Okay.
instance, Jesus, notice what Peter said. This
Mm-hmm.
man who has been foreordained by the counsel of God, you have taken by wicked hands and have
Mm,
killed, and therefore repent, or else, right? It was
that's
God's
right.
purpose that they will kill Jesus. and yet
Mm,
they were responsible for the evil that was done. Think
mhm,
about Joseph. You meant it for evil, but God
mhm,
meant it for good, right? So
mhm.
when we talk
That's
about God's will, we have to talk about it from at least a couple of aspects. There is
mhm,
the will where we say, God have said, do this, do that, do that. And that
mhm.
is fully in accordance with his moral, holy standard as far
That's
as
right.
you are to please him. But there
Mhm,
is the decretive, where God, even the same thing He has told you, when you choose to say, I'm going to do evil, God could also have the power to say, nope, I will prevent you from doing evil. Think about how many times they want to kill Jesus, and yet they couldn't do it until the appointed time,
mhm.
right? So, in all of what we are talking about as everything being a part of God's will, it doesn't negate the reality that men are responsible for their evil deeds that they do,
Right, right. That is
right?
where
So
I
that
want to say
is
that. So
peace.
if that
Yeah.
evil deed makes a victim out of somebody, then you have to
Hmm.
clarify it and let it be known that this is an evil act that God will punish the
Hmm.
person for. You
Yes.
understand?
Correct.
Like when
Correct.
Abel was killed, you see, when Abel was killed, for example,
Hmm.
it's not something that God. This is very tough, but it's not something that I believe God was approve of that act, that which is a sin. So sin can
Hmm.
happen because of the consequence of sin and all of that, like the whole issue. So for me, when I approach a family on a pastoral, it's a little tricky, but when I approach a family on a pastoral level and I'm kind of bringing them hope and healing and kind of encouragement to continue to trust, I don't want to start it from that sovereignty point. I want to start it from the point of the fact that God is in control of everything. Let me kind of give my answer now so that you can also respond to it. Here's how I'll approach it, right? For me, I know that God could have prevented the child from being knocked by the car. But my
Hmm.
first place of hope is the fact that God allows the child to go to the other side because, in the grand scheme of things, the other side is better than this side. Does it make sense? So we are only looking at this side, so we kind of see what we have lost. But if you step back very well, realize that the child going to the other side is, in a way, if you really look at it, the child is in a better place, not a worse place, right? The whole the pain and all of that definitely has been created in the vacuum of the family, but God didn't push the child back, so to speak, because where the child is, I don't want to get into the accountability part and all of that, but I feel that the place after where we live, uh, the life after this life is better than this life, so to speak. That's kind of how I'm kind of bringing that message to the family, that the child is not in the worst place. The child is not like, if she's not even at the age of accountability, then it's like the child is in a safe place, so to speak, right? So that's the first defense I will bring in, and then based on that, I will therefore say that um all the actions that went into the death of the child, God is not going to just overlook it. God is going to make sure that if there's any person who did it wrong, then that aspect will also come in. So I feel when I speak that way, the person doesn't just get up and say it is God who has done it. So I want you to touch on that, and then we will just take a break and come back. So I want you to
Yeah.
explain
I
clearly so that
think,
people will not wake up and say that it is God who made the child die. So and they forget about all
right.
the responsibility
Right.
that other people play.
Yeah, I mean, certainly those comments are very useful if you know the cause of death and
Hmm.
any form of injustice or wrongdoing that is associated with it, right?
Right. Hmm.
So, but if you don't, then you don't also want to speak just by placating somebody with something which is not truth.
That's
You
right.
see what I mean? So it's not
Mhm.
always easy to go in that route. Say somebody was murdered, then it's easier to bring that. But if it
Okay.
was an accident where it could have happened that maybe the child was not looking, you don't know all the circumstance. So I think
Mhm.
it's
But
good
when
to
is a
bring
drunk
that.
driver? When is a drunk? When is a drunk driver? It's pretty clear
Sure,
that that he
sure.
was saying
If it's a drunk driver,
it.
we know he was an irresponsible on his path, and
Exactly.
God would deal with
Exactly.
that. But
Right.
you definitely also and to the other question on where the child is going, that is not
Mhm.
also always the best thing to do, because
Right.
for one, if for instance, if you give me an 80-year-old, I am
Mhm.
certain that an 80-year-old is an accountable child before God.
Mm.
8-year-old knows right and wrong. Now, if
From
it is a
yes,
1-year old, if it
that's
is
a
a
different.
6-month old, I think those
Mhm.
are a bit easier to be
Right.
able to affirm the reality that they have not reached that level of knowing good and evil, and therefore, for them, there isn't a sense of accountability in that way
Right.
for
But
us to
the reason
worry
I
about
kind of
where, right?
it's like let me kind of clarify, not clarify, let me kind of add a little bit of input into that
Sure.
angle. You know, there's a verse that actually address the issue about the innocent will die, and people will ask why, but they don't know the God as the one that took them. There's a, I think, I don't know if it's Isaiah, there's a verse that speak like that. But so I'm
Mhm.
on the understanding that when God takes untimely a person, the verse in I believe it's Isaiah, the verse that is speaking to that fact is saying that if the child is kind of like righteous, then in a way the weight of the weight of God receiving the child is good in a sense, in the grand scheme of
Yes.
things. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm trying to say. So yeah,
But
so
that
Bible
is
says
if you
when a good person
if you know.
taken away. Okay, you mean
I
you
think
have to
that
know
is if you
the
know the
condition of the
state
child.
of the person, right?
Right.
If, for
Hmm.
instance, you know he's a Christian, it's easy to say absent in the body, present with the Lord, right?
That's right.
And I know the
Hmm.
text you are talking about, Isaiah 59 also, it said the righteous die and
Hmm.
people wonder what's happening, and God is
That's
taking them to prevent them from further trouble that is coming. But notice,
right.
it's the righteous. It's not
That's right.
saying anybody dying in a crazy way like this are innocent.
Hmm.
No, it's not.
That's right. Hmm.
In that case, it is just to say that they were not responsible for their death. Somebody caused it. You
Mm.
you you
Mm.
you you you, you
Right.
see.
But I'm
So
saying
when,
that
yeah.
based on that verse, we can also say that then, because we really are trying to uh cause them to hold on to their faith and continue to trust in God for the thing that only God understands best. But in
Mhm,
bringing all of that to them, you must make sure that everything that makes it not, Bible says something like, don't think of it strange when these things happen to you. So when you share a
mhm,
verse like that, then they understand that there's room for these uh innocent people to face things that you can't explain, but
mhm,
still Bible has kind of open up. So because like you said, you don't know a lot of facts, so you can't tell, but you can bring all of those truth to the table, that sometimes this is some of the reason why that will happen, sometimes this that. So basically that's what I'm trying to say, that when you bring all of those, then they will not think that God doesn't care. They will now realize
mm,
that, oh, there are conditions where God even will do that. We are not saying that's what it is, but we are kind of making it as clear as possible that all of these factors are possibilities. So they listening to that, they are, because if they know their child is really a child that was a godly child, and even probably like you said, a Christian home, the child was a God-fearing child, then they will comfort themselves a little bit and say, um we are glad that when it comes to the child and God saw it fit that this child
mhm.
uh being where she is now is a good thing. So that's why I added that point in. But yes, please continue.
No, no, I agree. I think it's good to bring out the. It's just you may probably preface it by saying, I don't know, but
Hmm.
I know that these are some of the reasons why things like this would happen. right?
Right.
And so then
Mhm.
you lay a broad spectrum, and then whatever they could I engage with, they themselves, by God's grace, will pick up on. But
That's
I
right.
think it's also good to remind them, because sometimes, you know, we really need to live with a sense of God in our lives,
Mm,
to understand that God is in control and over our lives. And especially as Christians, we are to trust God as a good God. And
right.
I think that's where we want to ensure that, recognizing that the most senseless act in this world is not coming from an unjust God,
Mm, mm.
right?
And
It is
that
coming.
is a big debate that sometimes I think, because if this is because there's a family involved in kind of the way we set up the story, you don't really want to uh use that opportunity to, because like you said, the primary goal is to bring the comfort, right? Comfort them with the same way you're comfort, uh, uh, being empathizing with them. So I think that phase should be clearly done before you try to go into.
Yeah.
So for me, my challenge is that the person drawing closer to you on the couch, kind of scooping closer to the pastor and whispering to you and asking, is it God's will that my child died? I feel this an answer that is theologically correct, right, might not be in the right time. You understand? So
Mm,
you, because you want them to not, I'm not saying it's not a good question, but you want them to because you want, because really I think the question they are asking is like really a cry. They don't want answer, right?
mhm.
They are really, it's a cry of their heart. It's a pain they are going through. So when to take that question and you really treat it as a Bible class question, then you are going to bring, I feel that timing is not right, right? When they come from a place of a little healing that's taking place and there's a little time, then I feel that when you, as a pastor, if you are laying some strong foundation for them to keep living and keep overcoming challenges, there and then I think it's a good place to dig deep. But when the case is hot like that and there's a lot of emotions, I feel as a pastor, you shouldn't answer that question. What do you think? At that moment in that
I
living
think
room,
I
as
think
a pastor,
it's certainly,
comfort them
yeah.
rather,
I
you
think that
know,
there is some, definitely some
because
wisdom to.
it did happen. It did happen to me and three pastors, and it was horrible because
Mm,
one of our favorite church member was shot by a stray bullet on her way to home,
mm,
and she just died. And so we went to the family, and one of the pastors said, God's will has happened. And I said, no, no,
mm.
you can't say, you can't say that. You can't really say that. So it became an issue. So I feel that the sovereignty of God must be clearly stated, that regardless of, like you said, I like the way you said it, regardless of the outcomes, we must understand that a good God is still in charge, right? We must understand that. But when we look at the source of different actions, I am of the truth that because of accountability, there are some things that God uh, will be silent today, but He's not done with that case. And
Sure, sure.
because the greater good is still going to happen, then we will be able to, because we will have to, because He didn't tell us that these things will not happen to us in the first place. You see, there's no verse that says you'll be exempted from all of this. It is through all of this that we learn to trust, we learn to grow. But I still want to say that it's possible that the silence of God cannot be explained as him being done with the case and therefore this is his will. I feel his will is
Right.
still loading. Does it make sense? Like his
Oh
will
yeah.
for this case is still loading. In other words, so
Yes.
this is not the full picture. So we have to kind of see from that angle so that it will bring the help. But thank you. Any other thoughts on this subject? So now
Yeah.
zero in
Another
on the
thing I want to point. Yeah. Another quick point is, I like the spirit of Job. You know,
mhm.
when it happened, Job could have been, why God? And could have been
Mm,
in that place, right? But
that's
notice his
mhm,
spirit. He just humbled himself before God, and he confessed in a humble spirit, and he went into that place of worship. And I think one
that's
thing
right.
we could do, not just with words, but with proper prayers with the
Mm, mm,
family, right?
mm,
Because you are in a better space than they are. Bring
mhm,
up those areas of humility before God. Like, think about
mhm,
Eli. He heard that the ark has been taken and his kids have been killed, and he basically said, "It is the Lord, let him do what he
mm,
wills." And
mm.
it takes a
Yes,
man of
yes,
strength
yes,
to
yes.
be able to bow to
A
God.
lot of people bash him. A lot of people bash him that it was a horrible thing he said. But I guess you were the only one that have
No,
said
it's
that
not horrible, but it's a
they said he was so
bowing.
passive. He says you were so
He
passive that
wasn't
look at what he
passive
said.
at all. He feared God. That's the
I
point.
see.
He had a
Interesting.
spirit of, I'm under God, and whatever my
Mm-hmm,
God will ordain, I know it's
mm-hmm.
right, and therefore I will humble myself to the will of God. I think
Wow.
often the issue is, and that's why we need to start and grow in our thoughts about the justice and the righteousness of God. That we talk about,
Mm-hmm,
I'll put my hands on my mouth and be
mm-hmm,
silent before God,
mm-hmm,
because I
mm-hmm.
don't know why he has done it, but I'll be silent because lest I will speak something evil against my God. And
Uh-huh,
and
uh-huh,
it takes strength for a person to be able to do that when that day comes. But that is
mm-hmm,
the right way to approach it, to understand that it may be difficult and I may rack my
mm,
mind and cannot figure it out, but I
right.
know who is there in control of this. And therefore, I'll
Mm-hmm,
bow myself under my God. And if we could do that and even get into
mm,
the place where we say, Lord, I thank you that even this, you are going to work it out for your good, for my good,
mm-hmm,
and you will use
uh-huh,
it for your
uh-huh,
glory and your
uh-huh.
purposes are behind it. I know when I see it, I will praise
Mm,
you. You
mm-hmm.
are beginning to heal right away when you get into
All
that
right,
place. Yeah.
definitely. But
So,
I like that so much. I guess something just came up that I have to ask. So where do we therefore kind of stand up? We're not standing against God, but where do we stand up and kind of go to God and request 50 more years? Where does that come in?
hmm,
When it's kind of coming, because the way you made it is like when you surrender is beautiful and it's an act of worship. So where does it come in that you can go back and say, can I get 15 years? So can you balance that for me a little bit?
yeah, yeah. I think obviously in those cases, evil is coming and you see
Mm-hmm.
that thing has been targeted towards you, but you go in
Mm-hmm.
that place to intercede, right?
Yes,
And
sir.
often
That's a
it's
word.
it's before the
That's
situation occurs, right? So in that,
right.
you even go and prostrate yourself, and you don't go
Mm-hmm.
and demand. You go and you confess your sin and you plead for
Mm,
mercy, like even Ahab, right?
mhm,
He was told you're going to die. Before the death came, he said, "You know what?
mhm.
I know God. Maybe God will listen. Maybe the
That's
person, and because you don't know what God will do with your prayer.
that's right.
So in a way, it's always good to venture out. Venture.
Right, right,
Perhaps
right.
God will hear and relent.
That's
You
that's
see.
that's what I'm trying to say.
So yeah.
And there are those that like end up becoming like that. So that's why I wanted you to touch
Mhm,
on that, because definitely, and I feel that even though you said that when you see it coming, but I think even if you are in it, like David was in it, and he was praying that the baby will not die, all of that. So even when you are
mhm,
in the situation, I like really what you're saying, that it has to be, all of that has to be with a heart of not challenging God or not kind of
right,
questioning God, but you have a question that you want to ask. So it's not arrogance, or because who are you to actually question God? You know what I'm saying? Say so.
mm,
Basically, I think
mm,
when you come to Him as humble as you know how, and you ask those things, I think is a great thing
yeah,
that God will
yeah,
respond to you. So thank you, thank you. So it's not a simple question to just answer like that. But the big question we are talking about is, why do good things happen to innocent people? And uh I guess what I pick up from you, what you're saying is that God is in control, basically. Because of that, that is where the innocent should draw their strength from and continue to trust God, because He's a good God. And I like what another teacher said, that when you have these questions and you don't have a God, then you are in big trouble. So these
Mm,
questions
mm,
should draw you rather close to God than away, because these
yeah.
questions is a question that is kind of makes you helpless as a human, that you have to seek
Mm,
God for that kind of comfort. Thank you so much for your time. I do
mhm.
appreciate it. Definitely, if your time is free, then we are going to be spending a little more time diving into this. And so I would really love to have you next week for us to dialogue some more. God bless you. So I'm going to
Okay.
spend the 15 minutes to wrap up, and then we will do a part 2. And definitely I'll bring are you still single, so that I can shout out for all the pretty girls watching us? All right,
Ah, come
producer,
on, move on.
you can take him off now. And thank you so much, everybody. Let me see if there are any comments on here so I can get some questions in. But thank you so much, Mr. Sari. We will connect next
All
week.
right.
God willing.
Okay,
All
Kwame.
right. Let me
Bye.
see if there's bye. Let me see if there's any other comment on Facebook or YouTube. Let me check it. All right. So the man of God is watching. George Josiah Jima is watching. Let me go off and come back. I will see if I'll get some comments. Awesome. Let me see if there's any comments here. Any comments? All right. All right. No comment yet. All right. No comment. All right. So, producer, is he off or on? I think my screen has frozen a little bit. Let me see. Let me see. All right. Okay. So, I'm not sure if he's on or still off, but so that is what we are trying to get to the bottom of. So, he shared a lot of things, and it is true, but it is still complicated. So, let me try to see if I can also bring in a few thoughts when I was kind of dialoguing with him. I feel that we all should begin to understand that when it comes to the life that we have as people, God has clearly communicated to us that this life has a lot of truths and things that we must all understand. What I would say to you is outcomes, things that happen, none of them is above God, but all of them have their source. Let me say it again. All the things that happen, none of them is above God, but all of them has their source. There's a reason why things happen. Carelessness can be a reason why things happen. Lack of preparation can be a reason why things happen. Evil agenda can be a reason why things happen. The Bible said, for this reason, the Son of Man was manifested to destroy the works of the enemy. So there are a lot of plethora of sources and causes that makes things happen. But again, think of it. God is above all those sources. So as an individual, understand that God has spoken that I wish above all that you may prosper and be in health, even as your soul prosper. Oh, Jerusalem, how I long to have you to myself, but you won't let me. So God is relating to all of us, not in a robotic way where he has this thing. So here's what I want you to hear. God allow all the variables to act as if they're on their own, because at the end of the day, his sovereignty is what he Uh, his sovereignty is the final say. But let me not be philosophical. Let me put in what I'm trying to say. So for me, I humbly submit that it is not God's will that the baby is dead, but God has accepted the baby into a better place if the baby is a child of God, like my friend said. And if it's not God's will, why did God allow it to happen? Why didn't God prevent it? Right? That's where my friend's point becomes stronger. If you say God has allowed it, then you don't ask the next question that why, if it's not his will, if all the evil we see, if all the calamity we see, if it's not God's will, then why doesn't he stop it? Knowing that he has all the power to stop everything. Right? And when you hear that, I tell you that all the things that has happened that God didn't stop, all the bad things that has happened, all the sad things that has happened, all the painful things that has happened, that God didn't stop, all of them, he will judge it. Are you understanding? So there's an immediate judgment where he stops right away, or a final judgment where he does what he does with it. Do you understand? So the first picture we see is Cain killed Abel. God didn't stop it, but he didn't leave it alone. You see what I'm trying to say? So for me, I want you to brace yourself that definitely difficult things will happen to the innocent. But every one of those difficult things will be balanced, will be accounted for. It will be scored. It will be settled. It will be refunded. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Because judgment is coming to rectify things that don't look right. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So I want you to understand that when these challenging things happen, like I said to my friend, God is silent, but he's not done with it. The verse says, and I saw a great white throne, and both the living and the dead. The sea gave up its dead, and they stood before him, and books were opened. So I believe a book has a title, The Suffering of the Innocent. That book will be opened. And order will be called. And compensations and rewards and things will be zeroed by the time this owner of the earth sit on the judgment seat. So in the interim, somebody can stand and plan evil and go do it. And you wouldn't want to say it is God's will. It is man who has disobeyed. And the Bible said, it's appointed unto man to die once, and after death, judgment. So things will happen. Strange things will happen. Unfortunate things will happen. But the righteous judge will bring everything into its proper righteous conclusion. Judgment will be so brutal that even phone calls will be used as evidence on the judgment day. Judgment will be so brutal. Every word that has come out of your mouth has been recorded for evidence and verification. So, ladies and gentlemen, people of God, the innocent will not suffer in vain. The innocent will not suffer in vain. Every bad thing that happened to a person who didn't deserve it is recorded for rectification on the day. And so I want to pause here and encourage your heart that this is not the end of the story. And actually, the end of the story will begin on Judgment Day. This is called the examination period. You can circle whatever you want, and the teacher will be quiet, because he knows he will grade it. So life as we see it, all choices are allowed. All choices are permitted. But every choice will be judged. And so you have to protect yourself as a righteous person. Pray. Seek God to protect your children from evil. So he says, when you pray, say, Our Father, let your will be done, and let your kingdom come, and deliver us from evil, because evil is around. Let me pray for you before we go. Father, in the name of Jesus, deliver us from evil. Deliver the innocent from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Same time next week, I'll connect with you, and then we'll continue part 2 on why do bad things happen to innocent people. God bless you.
God doesn't want. These people know who they talk about, they go close their mouth. But this my God, no they lie, you know they sleep, you know they slumber.
Slow down. Yeah. Surely bound to talk, y'all. God is faithful, you heard?
Yeah.
Don't you ever rush in life. Faithfully see who has called you. 1,000 years he said they forgot. You would never